In this video tutorial we're going to be looking at baking ambient occlusion onto geometry. So let's start out by creating an ambient occlusion shader. Let's go into the hypershade. Let's just go in. If I just type in surface, get a surface shader on here. Okay. Let's go into the mental ray textures, and I am currently using mental ray as the default render engine. So I'm going to go into mental ray textures. Just find it's doing this every so often. Let's just go back into hypershade. This seems to be a bit of a 2016 issue. Go into textures. Let's choose MIB ambient occlusion, and let's connect this up. So out value to our out color of our surface shader. Into our surface shader, and let's just rename this AO ambient occlusion. Just close this down for a second. I'm going to select all the objects in our scene, right click and assign existing material AO. So these objects right now I'm using because I know that they all have UV coordinates attached to them, and when you are doing baking you do need the UVs attached. With overlapping UVs or no overlapping UVs, as they can cause problems as well. The scene goes black, but don't worry about that if we do render out. Okay, so as you see, when you do render out, it gives us our ambient occlusion on the render. It is a little bit noisy right now, so we can increase the quality of the ambient occlusion shader. Let's just close this down. Let's go back into our hypershade. Just choose the MIB ambient occlusion. I'm going to up these samples. I'm going to take it up to 64 for now, just for more speed than anything else. We will probably take this higher, maybe up to 128 for the actual render itself, but we'll leave it at this for now. So with that done, let's close out. Let's just take another quick render of this. Okay, and that's good enough for the purposes of this video tutorial. So with that done, what we now need to do is actually bake this ambient occlusion texture onto the object, because currently this is just a render in the viewport. These aren't attached to the objects. So let's close this down, and we need to go into, make sure you are in the rendering module, and we need to go into lighting and shading and batch bake mental ray. We're just going to the options for this, and I'm just going to go in and just reset the settings. So let's select all the objects in here. Objects to bake, I'm going to leave as selected. We could choose all, because these are all the objects in the scene, but selected is probably the better option. I'm going to bake to texture, and the bake optimization we're going to use multiple objects. Just a point about this, that if you are baking out even onto a single object, you may get noticeable seams where you have the UV seams on your model. Multiple objects is a better way of actually baking these out. It can fix this problem, along with this filled texture seams down here, which we may have to increase as well. So let's go in, let's carry on. Let's bake shadows. I'm going to leave the camera as perspective for now, and we're going to click on use bake set override. We'll not keep the original shading network, because we're going to just let the ambient occlusion bake onto these objects and take over the shading network, so it's going to create its own shading network on there. If you wanted to actually just render this out to an image, a texture, and then put that into Photoshop or deal with it in a different way, bring it in manually, you can do that. We can keep original shading network ticked, but for this I'll just uncheck it. Color mode, I'm just going to use light and color. We're going to go in and we'll just leave the resolution and all the other values as they are currently. Okay. And what we're going to do, just making sure that these are selected, is we'll just click on convert. Okay, and here we are. So all of that, the ambient occlusion information has actually been baked directly onto the geometry now. So if you just have a look at this, if we just kind of click these and move these out of the way, oops, don't select the plane object, you see that all that all the ambient occlusion information where the light hasn't hit, so the occlusive information there, you can see that. Actually got some of the shadow information on there as well, on the objects, and all that is on the objects themselves, so baked into a texture. Just close this down for a second. If you need to find these textures, if you haven't set up a project folder and you're working with the default, where you're going to find these is in your documents, in your Maya folder, under the projects, the default, and you need to look under the render data and mental array, and there you find the light maps. And there we have just our 4 textures that were baked out as TIFF files. Okay, so that is baking ambient occlusion onto geometry.